Hello adventurers, and welcome to today's Expedition Erudite. With it being the final Monday of the month, today we'll take a look back at this month in history. Before we begin, I do want to give a warning. History is not clean. It is not pretty, and today's topic is one which has soiled the annals of history. So be prepared that today may be a more difficult video to watch than any other on this channel so far. That event we look at today? Well, on November 15th, 1940, the Nazis sealed off the now infamous Jewish ghetto in Warsaw, Poland. To get a full understanding of the event, we'll take a look at pre-war life in Warsaw, life under the Nazis and the relocation to the ghetto, what life was like inside, and ultimately, what happened to the ghetto. So, with more of a somber approach, strap on your knowledge knapsack, adventurers, and join me as we launch today's Expedition Erudite, this month in history. Prior to the outbreak of World War II, Warsaw was a thriving center of Jewish life, home to one of the largest Jewish communities in Europe. Over 350,000 Jews, constituting roughly 30% of Warsaw's total population, created a dynamic community rich in cultural and religious traditions. The city was a hub of Jewish intellectual and cultural life, with an abundance of synagogues, schools, and businesses that were integral to the city's social and economic landscape. Jewish life in Warsaw was characterized by a blend of religious observance and modern secularism, reflecting a community with deep historical roots and a significant role in the broader tapestry of Warsaw's diverse and dynamic society. The German invasion of Poland began on September 1st, 1939, and marked a turning point for the Jewish community in Warsaw. With the Nazi occupation came a series of oppressive policies targeting Jews, which quickly escalated into a systematic campaign of dehumanization and persecution. Jewish residents were coerced into forced labor, often in grueling and demeaning conditions, an effort calculated to break their spirit and resilience. Additionally, the confiscation of their properties was not just a material loss, but a deliberate act to erase their legacies and histories from the city they had long called home. As the occupation progressed, Jews in Warsaw were increasingly subjected to both physical and psychological abuse, along with public acts of violence. These actions were part of a broader strategy of terror and humiliation aimed at isolating and marginalizing the Jewish community from the rest of society. This systematic dehumanization was a critical component of the Nazis' genocidal agenda, laying out the groundwork for the atrocities that were to soon follow. Then, in 1940, the Nazis took one more step toward the Holocaust that was about to occur. The regime made a strategic decision to isolate the Jewish populations by establishing the Warsaw Ghetto, ghettos being a newer idea that was gaining popularity within the Nazi command. The area designated for the ghetto was already densely populated with Jews, but also included Polish residents who were then displaced themselves. Completed in 1940, the ghetto walls physically segregated the Jewish population. The walls, topped with barbed wire, were not just physical barriers, but also powerful symbols of the isolation and oppression that the Jewish community was about to endure. With the completion of the ghetto walls, a new and challenging phase began for the Jewish community: forced relocation. This relocation of Jewish families into the Warsaw Ghetto was a harrowing and disorienting ordeal. It began with abrupt notifications, with many families being given just days or even minutes to prepare. These Jews faced the agonizing task of hastily choosing few belongings, leaving behind many items of sentimental and practical value, which were ultimately confiscated by the Nazis. The process was made all the worse as it often occurred under the watchful eye of SS or other Nazi soldiers, and the conditions the Jews were to expect in the ghetto were unknown to them. So what was a necessity and what wasn't was also an unknown to them. Upon leaving their homes, many were forced to make their way on foot, burdened with their limited possessions, while others were transported in overcrowded and uncomfortable vehicles. Upon arriving at the ghetto, they encountered chaos and extreme overcrowding. Families scrambled to find living space in already densely populated and inadequate housing, often sharing cramped quarters with several others. Adapting to the harsh realities of ghetto life, with its severe restrictions, food shortages, poor sanitation, and the ever-present threat of violence and deportation, marked a profound and distressing shift from their former lives. This entire process of relocation was not just a physical move, but a jarring transition into a life of heightened vulnerability and uncertainty under Nazi rule, ultimately coming together on November 15th. Life inside the Warsaw Ghetto was a daily struggle for survival. The first major challenge was the severe overcrowding. Designed to contain a fraction of its eventual population, the ghetto was forced to accommodate over 400,000 Jews in an area that was a mere 2.4% of the city's size. Families were crammed into tiny, dilapidated apartments, often with several families in a single room. This severe congestion led to a breakdown of basic sanitary conditions, making even simple daily activities like cooking, sleeping, and personal hygiene difficult. The cramped living conditions were more than uncomfortable, though. They eroded personal dignity and privacy, leading to increased stress and tension among the residents. Moreover, the crowded conditions in the ghetto were ripe for the spread of diseases, with typhus and tuberculosis becoming rampant. Typhus, spread by lice, thrived due to the lack of sanitation and the impossibility of maintaining cleanliness in such crowded conditions. Tuberculosis spread easily in the malnourished state of the residents and the tightly packed living quarters. With limited medical resources, these diseases often went untreated, turning what could have been manageable illnesses into deadly afflictions. The constant fear of illness and the sight of sick family members and neighbors added a layer of despair to the already challenging life in the ghetto. Hunger was another pervasive aspect of life in the Warsaw Ghetto. The Nazis severely restricted food supplies, which led to chronic shortages and the aforementioned malnutrition. The food rations provided were insufficient, and residents resorted to desperate measures to obtain food, including smuggling and bartering, as well as even eating rodents. Malnutrition weakened the inhabitants, making them more susceptible to the previously mentioned diseases and reducing their ability to work or even perform daily tasks. The struggle to find enough food to sustain themselves and their families was a constant preoccupation, adding to the psychological burden of ghetto life. Despite the oppressive conditions in the Warsaw Ghetto, though, the Jewish community within it displayed extraordinary resilience and resourcefulness. An extensive underground network emerged, playing a crucial role in improving the dire circumstances. Smugglers risked their lives to bring in essential supplies such as food, medicine, and information from the outside world. These smuggling operations, often conducted through hidden passages or by bribing guards, were vital lifelines. They did more than just provide physical sustenance. They also offered a psychological boost to the inhabitants by allowing them some way to defy their Nazi captors. This resistance helped to keep a sense of community and hope alive among the oppressed population. In addition to material support, the community endeavored to preserve their cultural and educational traditions. Secret schools were set up in a number of ghettos to continue the education of children and adults, defying the Nazi ban on formal education for Jews. These clandestine classrooms became spaces of intellectual freedom and resistance, helping to maintain a sense of purpose and normalcy. Cultural activities, including music, theater, and religious ceremonies, were conducted covertly. These events were not merely for entertainment. They were acts of psychological resistance designed to preserve a sense of identity and community. They provided a temporary escape from the harsh realities of ghetto life, fostering solidarity and reminding the residents of their heritage and humanity. This cultural resilience was as crucial as physical survival, asserting the community's enduring spirit in the face of relentless dehumanization and adversity. However, in 1943, the Nazis had formed the final phase of the ghetto's existence. Known as the final liquidation, this phase would see the last residents of the ghetto shipped off to extermination camps across the Third Reich. As the reality of these mass deportations became clear, a group of ghetto residents, many of them young, decided to resist, and on April 19, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began. Ghetto residents, under the Jewish Fighting Organization, ZOB, and leaders like Mordecai Anilowitz, engaged in armed resistance using smuggled and improvised weapons. They employed guerrilla tactics, leveraging their intimate knowledge of the ghetto's layout and the intricate tunnels underneath it. The Nazis, led by SS General Jürgen Stroop, were initially taken aback by the fierce resistance, being pushed back on numerous occasions. As the uprising dragged on, though, Stroop eventually resorted to burning the ghetto block by block. Lasting nearly a month, the uprising ended with the complete destruction of the ghetto. However, knowledge of the uprising spread across the globe, and it served as a spark for numerous other uprisings across the Third Reich. Today, the area once known as the Warsaw Ghetto bears few physical remnants of its tragic past, but it does still stand as a poignant historical site. Post-World War II reconstruction and modern development have transformed this part of the city. Contemporary buildings and bustling streets have replaced the cramped and decaying structures of the ghetto. However, the legacy of the ghetto is preserved through memorials and museums. The most notable is the Poland Museum of the History of Polish Jews, which stands on the site of the former ghetto and provides a comprehensive narrative of Jewish life in Poland before, during, and after the Holocaust. Plaques and monuments, including the Warsaw Ghetto Heroes Monument, mark significant locations related to the ghetto's history. While the physical landscape has changed dramatically, these memorials serve as solemn reminders of the ghetto's history and the resilience of those who suffered there. The area is now a blend of historical memory and modern urban life, attracting visitors from around the world who seek to understand and remember the events that unfolded in this significant location during one of history's darkest chapters. Thanks, adventurers, for coming along with me on today's Expedition Erudite, this month in history. And until next time, keep exploring, keep discovering, and keep learning.